Okay, Connect 112, guys, from the top. So, World Economic Forum, global agendas, and the rise of technocrats. All right, that's what we're talking about tonight. Now, what I was saying before was there was a push for me the last couple of days to say, yo, Steve, you know what? Go back to that global agenda situation. All right. And I've been following it or backtracking it since 2010. So every 10 years, there's a global agenda that kind of shapes the next 10 years. But every year they meet in Davos. All right. So when I went back, I said, you know what? Let me go back to 2000, which would shape 2010, then 2010 to shape 2020, 2020 to shape 2030. The reason why 2000 was important because we had a global, well, we had not a global, but we had a crisis here in the United States in 2008, right? So that was all linked to policies that were created in 2000 that caused a debacle, right? One thing about these guys is there's always a pattern and they always have to tell you what they're going to do. And then what they do is they give it to media, which is a branch of government that then forces it down our throat. So whether it be media, entertainment, you name it, it's always something that's um, familiar, right? I've either seen this in a movie or they're conditioning us at the end of the day, right? The reason for them having to come out to say it, that's the devil's kind of biggest trick, right? It, they just have to. It's part of the play. They don't want to spook people. You know, you spook a nation of people. They don't know what the cause of that or that reaction would be due to the cause. So they present it to us. The issue with us is we don't care to know. And even if we did, there's that, well, shit, what can I even do about it? Right. So this is where we're at in today. So again, I want to look at the World Economic Forum, WEF. Guys, we have to bring this back to the forefront because these guys are the ones shaping stuff in the background. So in order to know where we're going, we have to know where we came from. And they kind of play chess. So they're telling us where we're going also. So real easy formula. All right. So we have the 2000, how it evolved 2010, and then how that was executed in 2020, and then how they're planning for 2030. All right. So I'm also going to define the different acronyms for you guys to explain the players, to show you how this is not just about like poor countries. It's really about reshaping all nations, including the United States. All right. And then I also brought in the technocrats, which is a little bit different of a talking point, but we kind of know we've been talking about these guys. These are the new power brokers who build and run the digital systems that will make all the controls possible. All right. So I'm just going to start with the key definition. So, World Economic Forum, you might see it acronym WEF. All right. So, annual meeting in Davos of global elites, no formal power, but massive influence over policy. All right. So, you know, they're bringing in the top people from all nations, all sectors, media, you name it. They converge every year. All right. Globalization. We have to understand this. All right. So, it's basically linking economies so tightly that no country can act alone without consequences. You understand? Okay. So if one domino falls, they all fall. All right. This is a form of control, globalization. So anytime you hear global elite or globalist, these are people who believe in all things having the same parameters and controls wrapped around them in all sectors of the world. Okay. It works for some things, it doesn't work for others. It creates a reliance on a system. The fight is who owns the system. Okay. This one's a big one. This is what Bill Clinton kicked off in 2000. When I get into that part, you'll start to see it. But interdependence, right? It's the friendly label for globalization. It means that your economy rises or falls with theirs. All right, no separation in this. And understand, theirs rarely don't fall. What happens is when they put the pressure on the other economies, um, they tend to control massive amount of wealth and infrastructure and things like that, which prop up their economies. This is what you see with colonialism and all things that we're dealing with now. Okay. So we got that part, right? And really, it's a better word for dependency at the end of the day. Then we have the IMF, International Monetary Fund. All right, these are the bigwigs, guys. These are the emergency lenders to nations. All right. But the loans come with strings attached, a lot of private situations, cutting of spending, selling of assets when you cannot repay it. So it's they're the biggest loan shark in the world with the worst terms, but they kind of create problems too. right? So understand when the Rockefellers, the genius with a lot of these guys, and it's not a good genius, is they fund both sides of wars. To them, it doesn't matter, right? Create the problem, fund both sides, let them fight, and then loan out to reconstruct. Problem, reaction, solution. It's always a win for them on either side. They don't care about one agenda over the other. Just keep creating problems. All right. So that's the IMF. Then the World Bank, guys. This is the guys that sit at the top. All right. These are the fund infrastructures in developing countries. So on paper, it aids. It in practice, so it's debt, foreign contractors, equal control. All right. So the World Bank sits at the top. All right. We have CSR, that's corporate social responsibility. These are all made up shit that they've been doing since the 2000s that I need you guys to be aware of. All right. So it's an early idea that companies should serve social goals. Understand? So when they start to do the LGBTQ, LMNOP, all that, and you have companies that are backing it, this is the ask. You get money from us if you're able to do this. They do the same thing with celebrities at the end of the day when they need them to come through on something, right? Because remember, these guys are also shaping culture. So think about how vast the world is and how different we are. Just even in the United States, just imagine how different we are amongst like other black people. So now they're trying to create like a global agenda for how countries should culturally be ran. Colonizers. They're just coming from another end. ESG, environmental social governance. All right, this is the CSR, the corporate social responsibility. This is the 2.0 version of it. Everything is about words with these guys. All right, you just have to know how to define them, and you have to know when they change. Right, they always repackage something. It's never ultimate freedom. They're taking two things back. So today's compliance system for corporations look green, but it's actually about steering capital. All right. So this is the carbon credit situation that I've talked about. Yes, it's here. It's been here. It's kind of on an honor system. Everything's about to move where things are in control now. Right. So the ability to tell companies that they can't operate if they don't meet certain standards, hiding behind the veil of green, eco-friendly, and all the craziness that they talk about at the end of the day. Right. So we have to be able to read through how that part of it is shaping things. The one thing I want you guys to be aware of is we control all these companies. If not for us either spending or whether it be money or time or a combination of both, none of them exists. So at the end of the year, it's about just at the end of the year, yeah, definitely by the end of the year. But at the end of the day, it's really just about um, realizing how dependent we are on these systems, uh, understanding how they're working against us, right? And actually doing something about it to change that, whether it be championing a new system, a movement into building things that are conscious about people, and like the Airbnbs and the Turos and all these tech companies that disrupt certain markets. We can actually do the same thing and create free market in other ways, right? It may not be able to shut them down completely, but it'll definitely have them um, thinking about things and kind of retooling some stuff. So if there's no pushback, guys, we're going to have probably a handful of tech companies that control all industries around the world. And they're working closely with government. So you watch the Trump administration when he got sworn in, behind him was all the tech guys that were loving Biden right before that and hating Trump. So, and then as he moves around the world, who's he bringing with him? The technocrats that are from the United States. That's the power play right there. Those are the most powerful guys that are creating the technology that's going to work against us. This is all about IP at the end of the day. This is why you see China and the race for AI and everything. The AI is what's going to shape the or create the groundwork to be able to put the rules in place and run it smoothly. Okay. So we have to understand we're in control. All right. Then you have this thing called the Great Reset. This was the World Economic Forum's 2020 plan to reset capitalism into stakeholder capitalism. All right. So ownership replaced by access and subscription. The good old boys club is getting tighter and tighter now. All right. And then you have CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, government backed digital money, programmable, trackable, uh, potentially blockable. All right. And then finally, you have these technocrats, unelected experts, engineers, corporate executives who are designing um, and running the digital infrastructure that government relies on. So they're basically the operators of the new power system. All right. What you have to understand is when government can hide behind technocrats and control not only them, but banks, this is how we won't have due process in this country. At the end of the day, it's happening now. Private companies do not have to do business with you. You click the terms and conditions, it's cut you off, and then you figure out what you need to do next. All right. There's just not much we can do, guys, outside of disconnecting from the people who are trying to keep us connected. All right. So those are the key definitions. So as I go, you have a reference point, and you're not kind of lost. So we're going to start with the 2000 agenda. And then I'm giving you themes first. All right, guys. So 2000 agenda was the push for globalization and interdependence. Remember, it's all about dependency. All right. So they were going to do what? Provide debt relief for poor nations with conditions, make corporations socially responsible. So this was the start of the batshit crazy stuff. All right. And then begin to normalizing global governance. So this is where globalization is starting. Who led that? Bill Clinton. He was at Davos in 2000, and this was a quote. He said, "Globalization means interdependence. None of us who are fortunate can help ourselves unless we are prepared to help our neighbors." So understand, it sounds great until you start to see like what that destruction means. So when you're taking money and you're dependent on your nation being able to, stay afloat, and you take this loan that's tied to your infrastructure, your entire economy, right? So when you can't pay, guess what? You lose your country through policies. They're still making money. They're grabbing the resources from those countries. So this is what's propping a lot of nations, especially in Europe, is the pillaging of nations that have resources, okay, versus the ones that don't. This has been going on for a while. It's being called out now. All right. So the World Economic Forum papers also warned about neo-colonialism, which is crazy because that's the exact policy that they're pushing. See how they trying to just create these words where it's like, wait a minute, it's just being done in a different form. That's all. So what actually happened during that time? So there was a straight trade explosion and dependency. So this is off the 2000 policies between that 10-year span. This was exactly what was happening. All right. So the global supply chain, look, rich and poor nations, basically both rich and poor nations were locked into one global system. All right. So again, like I said before, when one domino fell, they all fell. So this is when you've seen a lot of global trade issues. All right. This is what these guys do. They make money off the demise and the loss of other people. In order to really make money at the end of the day, guys, you figure for every dollar you put in your pocket, that's somebody either giving it to you for something, either goods and services. So when you start to want to control everything that comes in, that means that people are really dependent on whatever you're doing for them. Is it working for you at this point now? All right. Is it a fair exchange? And I'm talking about on a global level. All right. We had a debt cycle, not relief. So the IMF relief forced privatization, cuts, and market openings. All right. So poor nations stayed dependent. All right. So this is when you start to see like this happened to Haiti. When there's issues, money starts to pour in, they start to give people control. Ironically, it was Bill Gates and his family were in control of the billions of dollars that flooded into Haiti. The first thing that these guys do naturally is they bring in private companies to be able to get the contracts to get access to the money. The money is nothing more than money laundering at the end of the day, right? When you don't have boots on the ground in a nation that's not developed, in a nation that doesn't stand on their own, how can they bite the hand that feeds them? They can't. And then you hear things like, oh, this is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, or this is the third world country. And then they start with the labeling. And then what does it do to us? Oh, no, I'll never want to go to that. Oh, this is, you start to form these thoughts about these countries. And the whole time, these countries were actually really evolving, some of them, right? Growing up, I would have thought Africa was all about starving babies and, donating some money to the Red Cross. That was what was depicted in the media. until you get to this point in time where it's like social media and we're able to see the images of wealth all over the world now. And now we're able to travel. So the world is a lot smaller. But that is part of that power construct because it's like if we keep expanding outside of borders and there's no controls put in, then people could kind of find places to go, at the end of the day and set up good lives. This is what America did. America was a great marketing machine, so it's able to poach top talent from other countries, send their children here to come study with never a plan to go back. So what happens to that nation? The brightest leave for opportunity as their nation fails and they can never go back home. CSR was normalized. So corporations in developed nations got pulled into social mandates, right? And this is what created the ESG I talked about. So now we're going back to just think about it. This started with just gay marriage, which was simple, right? The ability for people to do whatever they want, and then it just morphed into like all the way down to like children and normalizing how or shaping how things are being taught in school. This is Obama, okay? And then when that was his social, it's part of his mandates, his social mandates to create this system of like just more labeling. We still can't even define black or white. So adding confusion to the mix, keeping people separated, knowing that when social things happen like this, most people who are on the kind of the sane side of it don't say anything, out of risk of like being, whatever they do, right? They just tend to attack you and swarm you like, oh, you don't believe in equal rights for all people. It's like, yo, yeah, you guys are doing too much. My issue with it is just at the school level. These are kids. Teach them the basics. I don't need the social conditioning in the school. So this is the 2000s is what grew this. This was on the World Economic Forum global agenda in 2000. All right. So some of the impacts on developing nations or developed nations was jobs offshore. The middle class was hollowed out, right? Regulatory and trade interlocks removed national leverage. Yo, we was hurting ourselves at the end of the day. When they need to balance the books, they know what to do. You go offshore for work, for cheap labor. That means you create more profit. What happens to that middle class now? Lack of opportunity. You understand? You always think, and then they have you believing that it could be the private company. They can do what they want, but if they want to do that, that's within their rights. India is taking your jobs. Really? Okay. If I pause, people are still kind of coming in. So I'm just trying to get people in. So now we get to the 2010 agenda. And guys, we have this too inside of might be cryptocurrency. We have a lot of these agendas in there, and this is part of your course. So if you're not part of the academy, I would fully try to understand what's happening, what I'm talking about to see, because this is just a gaze into 2030. So if we're creating a playbook at the academy, we have to we have to understand what these guys are looking to do. Okay. And then just know that there's a pattern in their stuff, and we could either line up to push back or we could line up to make money and allow it to happen. I'm not doing the latter. So the 2010 agenda, what happened after? So here's the themes from the 2010. And mind you, some of these documents are even hard to find now, right? So we have the 2020 agenda, the 2010 and the 2000. They've like taken it off the internet. So we're still searching for it. We have parts of it, but the actual global agenda, the main document, they started to remove them. Sovereign debt is now the main risk. Regulate and control markets tightly. Promote stakeholder capitalism. This is the earlier part of the ESG we talked about. Embed climate into finance. Okay, this is pretty smart stuff. And then control the narrative with global agenda councils. All right. So the World Economic Forum in 2010. Here's the quote: Many countries are at risk, right? At unsustainable levels of debt, upwards pressure on real interest rates. All right. So they're telling you right now what's about to happen. If they raise those interest rates, those debt payments become too high for these countries. to be able to pay, creating a problem, right? So what actually happened? You had the European debt crisis. So this was Greece, Spain, Portugal, Ireland. All of them were bailed out. Okay. Pensions were cut, public assets were sold. What y'all don't realize is we're to that point now. They're going to actually use cryptocurrency to kind of offset that situation, but the same pain points are going to happen. You have to be able to take it off from somewhere. When you go to set a reset a monetary system, there is no one for one at the end of the day. You restructure it from the top down, and then you make sure you take as much from people as possible. That's it. They're not taking cuts. Okay. So you had the central bank power was consolidated. This was the Basel III. This was stress tests. This was tighter capital rules that gave regulators huge power. So anytime there's a problem within a country, whether it be through climate, right? So they mix finance with climate, and then the most dangerous one is they're mixing finance with health, with the pandemic, right? So once you start to control that, I'm looking at checkmate right in front of us because all they have to do is press a button and everything sets off. And at that point, in order for you to get things back, you have to release some things. All right. This was done. This was done in a lot of countries in South America. A lot of these countries that were like, um, uh, that had gangs and people were being terrorized. They let the crime get so bad. This is what's going to happen in America. You let the crime get so bad, people are going to be begging. You literally give up your freedoms and the rest of whatever little bit we have just for safety. So they're going to hit us on that end socially. They're going to hit us financially on that end, right? They're going to wrap health around it. I'm telling you, this next wave of shit is going to hit us so much that if you don't have proper footing, something's going to take you out. And when I say take you out, meaning you'll press a terms and conditions to accept anything that they're giving us in that moment because that's your lifeline. And I'm not here to like tell you what to do or not to do because everybody has a breaking point at the end of the day. But what I can say is if we know that something could be coming and we know ways to minimize the collateral damage personally, then why not put the rails in place? Because it just is good business. That's what they're doing. They're not keeping money in banks. They have investment rails. They have assets. They have things that can be liquidated fast, and they have things that are hedging against these times right now. It's the same shit that we're teaching you guys inside the academy. So can I feel bad at the end of the day if people aren't landing right? No, not me. I mean, I did everything I can do. So now you have these climate mandates, right? Emissions trading, renewable quotas, carbon targets, and this is even in developing nations. They're just on a quest to create new bullshit at the end of the day. We talked about the tokenization of water. Do you know anytime that you put an asset or you change commodities to assets, you change, things that I deem just birthrights to assets, and then you start to trade these things, what these guys do, they create a problem on one end to create price fluctuations. Only developing, and it's not even developing countries, it's just developing people. So if you're not hip to this, you gotta your mindset ain't really that developed. So when they say developing nations, you need to stop thinking that they're not talking about you. Start adding yourself to that equation because this is a developing nation here. The same homelessness, the same people can't make it, like it's the same issues. So what's so developed about it? The only difference is the ones that actually and play the rules, by the rules, and know how the game is played, and then the ones who are like seemingly doing that, but just not realizing that that regular 9 to 5 mentality, and and that coming and going, and there's the not uh it's just not going to work in the next economy, guys. I ain't gonna get too deep into that. But the days of thinking that you're just doing the right thing, the days of thinking that you know what, that 4 year degree was the right thing, you just got to start looking at the whole picture now. We could right these wrongs. So the impact on developed nations, there were bailouts paid by taxpayers. Benefits flowed straight to big banks. ESG and climate rules restructured industries and investment flows in the US and Europe. This is how they cripple anybody that they want. I've been in business for a long time, and I could tell you that all it takes is one little thing to disrupt the entire industry. You can go from making millions of dollars a day to like making nothing just due to policy and changes and shifts in the way that money is moving. So when they're shaping policy through or culture and just industries with policy and shifts happen immediately, you know what they do? They line themselves up. Story. So when LeBron had left Cleveland, I I was living out of state. I owned a electronic cigarette company. I remember going to Cleveland, Ohio. I connected with the dental industry, figured it would have been a good partnership. I went to my first kind of medical trade show. We had a marketing person representing us, and we were just getting feedback and just trying to open up a new market. Long story short, I'm in the city of Cleveland for the first time. LeBron had left already. Shit's looking wacky out there, right? So I'm asking questions. I'm intuitive. I always look at the real estate, just analyzing. A lot of things are shut down. So I was talking to somebody who's a bar owner, and they kind of told me, listen, it was a girl. Her father owned a bar, and she was like, when this guy was in town, I could make $200-300 a night in the bar in tips, right? And she's like, now I could barely make like $20. And she said this was home and away games. So I'm understanding how this one player can shape an economy, right? And then how that owner had so much distaste for when he left, because it crippled the entire city. So in talking to people, they were like, listen, there used to be restaurants, more nightclubs, everything pretty much shut down. What LeBron and those guys did on the way back to Cleveland again, right? He lined up him and his team and they started to buy up real estate downtown. What do you think is going to happen when this kid decided to go back to Cleveland? Everything opens back up again. So what they did was they bought distressed property and then they were able to wait for that one decision to shape an entire city and an economy. It was wrapped around basketball. So when these people deduce us to shut up and dribble, it's fucking with us now, right? It's like, yeah, he's an athlete. Why is he talking about that? It takes the power away from people at the end of the day. Regardless of whatever agenda that he may be part of, that's not what I'm talking about. It's when you start to understand the power of people and individuals. They always have to make you feel less than. I didn't get too deep into the what's the guy that got fired and they brought him back, Jimmy Kimball. But I did hear a quote that he said, and he was like, for as long as he's been at that network, they've always made him feel like they were doing him a favor. And Jimmy's a white male in America, right? So the system would never let you know how big you really are. And this is our celebrity, so this is the control, not well, American celebrity. This is the control that they have over him. They've signed an oath to ESG and all this. They have to be part of all of that. Or at that point, if you don't, then you're independent at that point. So I've been watching culture being shifted by policy on many different levels before I even thought about creating a platform. This is the way that my mind operates in making sure that there's opportunity for all people. I've always been like that. All right. Now, with that, it takes us into the 2020 global agenda. So, what happened after? And here's the 2020 theme. So, they launched the Great Reset after COVID. Um, oh, let's not forget that the pandemic was mentioned in the 2010 agenda. I didn't want to go too deep into that, but that was the preparedness that they were preparing us for, and it came legit 10 years after. Okay, and that reshaped a lot of things for today. All right, so this was the launch of the Great Reset after COVID. It made stakeholder capitalism and ESG universal now. Okay, it accelerated digital governance and surveillance, and then it was all tied to recovery to green projects. You see how they always kind of bring that stuff through the back door. Now, the next person that you have to put on your radar now is the WHO organization. I didn't list them in here. That's going to be the people that handle the health, and that's all interconnected. So many countries signed on to this. So anytime there's a crisis, everybody has to handle it the right way. But Steve doesn't take vaccines. Steve drinks herbal teas and he's just mindful. It doesn't work for me. And there's countries that are the same way. So now we have to follow this global agenda. And look what it did to us the first time. And now everything's going to be linked to a digital ID. Y'all see where it's going? So this is Klaus Schwab. He's since stepped down, but he's still around. This is a quote from him. The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. All right. And then this was Ida Ukin. This was the actual person who says you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. All right. Klaus took it from her. But that was the backdrop to that situation. And this is exactly what's happening right now. So when you can give a technocrat ultimate power to make as much money as they can, and the only ask is that their system needs to be linked to this system and all things, then I can tell you that Bezos and all these guys are selling us short. And we got a decision to make as a collective. So what actually happened? Lockdowns normalized emergency power, right? Governments gained sweeping power. People accepted it as safety. It was a good movie. I'm be honest with you. They had the joint looking like everybody was melting outside. Okay. And I'm not downplaying this to people that lost their lives to do whatever, but I'm just more of a let's kind of prepare. Let's see it for what it is, and let's make sound decisions that aren't rooted in fear. And let's see how the chips fall. Stimulus with conditions, trillions of dollars tied to green ESG aligned projects, right? So now money capital is flowing in all industries. Debt is rising. All right. Digital passports and IDs. So COVID passes. That was a time when they tested biometric verification in multiple countries. So remember, that was the health crisis. I remember going to Puerto Rico and having to walk around with like a green okay, on a website to show that you answered a few questions at the airport. I'm like, yo, I mean, for anybody that was logical had to know like this shit is dumb. You know what I'm saying? So it was never about that. It was never about safety. It was always about the testing. The other part of it too is if they knew the mask didn't work, now you have to start asking yourself logically. So why would they keep telling us to wear masks? Right. So I go down the rabbit hole and it's not even like that deep. It's just logically speaking. I'm like, all right, I remember being in Times Square and they always had those, I don't know if it was Casio, somebody did a billboard and it was when you look up, you can see yourself and it would highlight you. It's biometrics, right? It was just taking people's data, seeing how long they interacted with something. And this is what billboards do now. This is what TV does. This is what our phone does. Understand? We just love being on front page. So when I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right. So if we cover the bottom half of our face, that's usually when people either are sick, which rarely happens in America because that's not what we do. You put a mask on, or when people want to do something that's not breaking the law. You want to rob something or something. You kind of cover here. Or if somebody wants to rebel, right? You probably wouldn't want to be seen either. So when you start to allow the camera to only focus on eyes, this is the biometrics. This is what stands us out. Not so much this. So imagine how many places our retina has been scanned to know God knows what detail they could pull from the situation too. Okay. So that was the digital passport and ID situation. And then corporations were used as enforcers. So you remember during the pandemic, it didn't get real until your company was like, yo, XYZ, right or wrong. All right. So tech platforms censored speech, they banned accounts, and they acted as private regulators. We've been down this road. There's nothing we can do. Like I be on timeout all the time on social media. I think they probably just lifted some shit on me the other day. And I know exactly when it happens every time. But I don't get too caught up in the numbers. I just want to get the message out in the time that I want to get the message out on my platform. So impact on developed nations, everyday freedoms become, conditional, and then digital surveillance is normalized. Y'all don't mind going to the airport for the sheer sake of convenience to put yourself through, a biometric system. But then you got to ask yourself, why was the airport like not better organized? Right? It didn't start getting a little bit more backed up when you had to take off your shoes, take off your belt, take out your laptop, right? That was the problem. Make the shit fucking inconvenience for them, and then start to put up these rails, Metro cards, um, easy passes. All things that are there to like digitally track you, all your movements at the end of the day. All right, cool. So now we have these new guys, the technocrats. This is the new power structure. All right, this is the piece that most people miss. Governments don't have technical capacity to run these systems themselves. These people aren't even like humans. They can't think. Their job is to just create divide. They're given scripts, and whether or not they follow the script, it just is who they are at the end of the day. The wild part about it is who puts them in power. So how long have we been watching the same senators of these same states, whether or not you vote, hold power and are able to be in indefinite? I take it, right? Because it doesn't matter. So again, showing you that the power does lie in the people, and it sounds cliche now that we not even running on that sort of model, but it's been said to us over and over and over. But we're so busy for the sake of convenience, we're able to just give everything up to private companies. All right. So you have digital ID systems, you have payment rails and CBDCs, you have carbon tracking platforms, and then you have AI compliance tools. All right. So this is not like they just have their hands on a keyboard type of control system. They don't need to pass laws, right? They just need to update the code and change the platform rules. That's it. And because artificial intelligence could be trained on the go, you're not going to know when these things are happening because every day terms, use, and conditions change. What you can say or can't say changes. And who can enforce it at the end of the day? Do we know that anytime I say Zionist, do I know that for sure? That's what's blocking my traffic from being seen? I don't know it for sure, but I know that every time I do it, I know exactly what happens. And I just got to chill out. And then once I chill out, because they still need the traffic, that's the sick part of it. Um, so a state might not be able to ban someone outright, but a private platform can deplatform or freeze you instantly. It's happened. All right. The government gets to control you by proxy without the Constitution in the way. So again, proxy wars. The United States could be involved in many wars in many countries and not have to fire a single round. This is the censorship part. The fact that people figured it out, and there's guys like me who could jump on here and just like easily break down the whole story and tell you exactly where to go and put a play in between. This is what the past leaders didn't do. They fell for the proxy situation too, because that's what they did well. They controlled our leaders. That's why these guys, any chance they get any of these platforms, if somebody got invited to the White House, they couldn't wait to go. I've never seen so many regular black people invited to the White House before. Social media influence. That was the only reason, because y'all idolized these type of people and gave them power. So we just got to figure out where you reroute the funds, because your dollar does matter. Trust me when I tell you that. It really does matter. Because you could either give them to guys who are doing things that work against us, that got us on the hamster wheel, or you can give it to people who are actually doing the right work, that are really creating the things to really kind of free us up. Back to us again. So technocrats aren't accountable to us as voters, right? They're just the bridge that's connecting the WEF policies to our daily lives in software, algorithms, and infrastructure. That's all they're doing. All right. So the 2030 vision, guys. And if they succeed at this, it would be CBDCs, programmable money with restrictions, digital ID tied to everything you do, carbon token economy. This one I'm going to dig in deep. All right. In the future. This is your consumption tracked and limited. This is when they'll be able to know. And the wild part about it is like, yo, how many times have we allowed someone else to go to the store for us? So we just can't send kids to the store no more. Are those days over too? And it's not going to be called CBDCs. It's going to all be tied to your digital ID at the end of the day, because at some point you do need an ID to function. And we've already been sold that bill of sale. So the next play is on us. All right. We got AI compliance. This is behavior scored automatically. We can't think that this shit ain't going to happen here. They're going to take something, they're going to rock us so much that we're going to just allow it. Propertyless, if that's a word, living, ownership replaced by subscription access. You will rent everything. You're starting to see the own nothing and be happy, right? You're starting to see autonomous cars. Y'all seeing how this thing is shaping out. And it's being driven by us. I've never seen a prototype that's gone to public that wasn't successful that stayed in public. These are all prototypes, guys. We don't need it. So I told you I'm starting this month. So it's fitting that it's October 1st, and this is the first month of digital sovereignty at Skyton Academy. All right. And we're starting here. So there's chinks in their armor now. The script is breaking a little bit. So BRICS Nation is building alternatives to Western banking rails. African nations are rejecting IMF and World Bank programs, reclaiming sovereignty. And I know this for a fact. Okay. Crypto and DeFi is letting people self-custody wealth outside of banks. Public awareness is rising, questioning ESG, questioning censorship, questioning digital ID. All right. So here's what we can do. And there's always a call to action. And y'all understand, at Skyton Academy, we have our new core principles. Number one, redundancy. Never depend on just one system. Number two, self-custody. Own your keys, own your files, own your backups. We've been saying this with data for the last how many years now? Data. What are the three M's with data? If Champ was here, and I might fumble them: maintain, monetize, and minimize. Have we not been saying this shit for years? So when I tell you that I'm a self-proclaimed not only visionary, I can say it with conviction because I haven't been wrong. And I would love to be wrong about this shit, but it's just too obvious to not like be okay with being wrong. Trust me when I tell you that this shit is already happening. They just need to create a problem strong enough that in order to unlock whatever little bit you have, you would exchange that. That's how they trained us. All right. So please, again, local resilience. This is small circles of trust. Remember, I told you, yes, this is a small circle, but we don't live near each other. We can't offer assistance if we're not near each other. Try to get at least 3 to 4 people, who can all have the same kind of mindset so you guys can come together in times of need. Understand? Minimize dependencies. That's number 4. So delete the choke points. I told you this month, October, starts the release of a lot of this stuff. I gave you guys the first private messaging app. We're going to start to talk about the dependence on Gmail and that whole ecosystem and how I'm moving off of that. Creating decentralized emails that are encrypted. I'm not even preparing for the future. I'm just preparing for what the fuck is happening now. So you call me a tin hat guy, all this other shit. It's like you don't even hear rabbit hole or tin hat shit anymore because it's just so obvious that this stuff is really happening. The truth is more wild than the lie. So minimize dependencies, guys. I'm not saying kill the choke points. What I'm saying is find an alternate and then make your decision. based on that. The final one is going to be mindset. So sovereignty begins in the head. I can tell you all of this situation. You can get off charge, like, yeah, I'm ready to do whatever. And at the end of the day, you wake up like, man, listen, that guy tripping. I need these apps. You know what I'm saying? I can't do a paper calendar. I have to be reminded what I'm doing tomorrow. All right, cool. That's the dependency. So there's a few things you can do. You can educate, right? Connect these dots for others. Self custody, own your money, your data, your identity. Build parallel systems, right? Barter, food, community finance. These are all things we talked about. Digital sovereignty, protect your communication and privacy. We've been doing this. We've been doing this. Collective action, pool resources for schools, businesses, and healthcare. Been doing this. We've been doing this. My ability to purchase the property in Colombia was built on owning and operating a online academy. Everybody was part of it in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Right? I could have easily reinvested that thing in something that could have made me a lot more money, and that could have been at the detriment and demise of people. I could put the money that you guys give me every day into markets that, that make money off of like just bullshit. I choose not to. I don't invest in these tech companies. It's my prerogative. Why, if we pulled our money out of them, what would their value be? And if we stop using them, what would their value be? I don't do shit halfway. So when I peel the onion back, I'm not like, yes, there's going to be some things that are more difficult than others when it comes down to like this codependency on certain systems. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of just like not giving them that much power to be able to shape the future. And I'm not trying to get that fight to my kids like that. They cooking them in a whole nother way. So the mindset shift is big. All right. So from globalization in 2000 to regulations in 2010, and then to what they call the reset in 2020, the playbook is super clear, guys. All right. This is not just about controlling poor nations. It's about reshaping all nations under one system of fucking compliance. All right. And the technocrats are the glue that holds the whole thing together. They're building and running digital cages. All right. You got BRICS, you got Africa, you got crypto, you got sovereignty movements, you have cracks in their systems. They design cages, we build exits. They plan control, we plan freedom. And again, freedom begins the moment you realize you're not free. That's Dot Connect Wednesdays.